Hello and welcome to the Shakespeare Podcast. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at Iago's character in Shakespeare's Othello. Shakespeare's Iago is a long way from the unnamed ensign of his source material. Just as Shakespeare gives us an heroic Othello, confident, dignified, candid and calm, so he sets up Iago to be a total contrast to him. Iago is working class, foul-mouthed and coarse-minded, a braggart, spiteful, bitter and envious, decrying in others the quality he himself lacks. Let's look first at how Shakespeare portrays Iago in the first act. Iago opens the play with Roderigo. His next scene with Othello in scene 2 takes no part in the Senate discussion because he's a commoner, and finishes Act 1 Scene 3 with Roderigo again. At the opening of the play, Iago is using Roderigo for his money and manipulating him to get him to do what Iago wants. This starts a pattern of deceit and manipulation that Iago will maintain throughout the play. Iago gets Roderigo to wake up Desdemona's father to inform him that his daughter has eloped. Notice that it's Iago who is racist and coarsely sexual, trying and succeeding to throw Brabantio into a moral panic that his high-born white daughter has run off with a black man. And immediately we see Iago with Othello in the next scene, telling him that he won't have anyone say a bad word about him, the black man that he's just been racist about. Notice also how Iago often brags about his exploits as a soldier, how many men he's killed, how many battles he's fought in. He warns Othello that Desdemona's father is a powerful man. Othello is unmoved. Iago advises Othello to run away when the mob arrives. Othello prefers to meet the situation head on. It's Iago who draws his sword to start a fight, and it's Othello who diffuses the situation. And here, in the first two scenes, is the contrast between the two men. In Iago's boasted hatred and his deceitfulness, here we have the main factors of the play already set out and defined. At the end of Act 1, Scene 3, Iago resumes his conversation with Roderigo, who is distraught that Desdemona has married Othello, hoping that he himself might have had a chance with her. Iago pours scorn on Roderigo's lovesick feelings and makes fun of his idea of, quote, virtue. Iago tells Roderigo that what he's feeling is lust, and thank goodness we have reason to keep our passions in check. He tells Roderigo that black guys are always changing their mind, and Desdemona's very young. She'll soon see that she's made a mistake. Roderigo is partly convinced by Iago, who presses his advantage by telling Roderigo to get all his money together. He's going to need it to win over Desdemona. Roderigo is easily manipulated by Iago, as he will be throughout the play, and he exits proposing to sell all his land. Iago has already told us that he hates Othello for giving Cassio the lieutenant's job, which Iago felt should have gone to him. At the end of Act 1, Iago gives us even more astounding reasons for his hatred of Othello, that Othello has slept with his wife Amelia. Iago doesn't know if it's true, but he says that he doesn't need proof. It's at this point that Iago conceives of the idea of getting Othello to believe that Cassio, quote, is too familiar with his wife. The 19th century scholar A.C. Bradley put great store by a phrase in this speech to explain Iago's motivation. Iago says that he has decided on this plan, quote, to plume up my will in double knavery. In other words, that Iago takes pride in his villainy and is essentially vain. He thinks a great deal of himself for getting away with his wickedness. In this interpretation of the play, Iago's success in disgracing Cassio exhilarates him and satisfies his hate pushing him on to the greater task of disgracing Desdemona. In Act 2, Iago has no sooner arrived in Cyprus than he starts being horrible to his wife Emilia. He's coarse, he's vulgar, he's inappropriate, and Desdemona defends Emilia. Iago indulges in this rhyming game in which he denigrates all women. Who should turn up in Cyprus but Rodrigo, looking to woo a married woman? Iago tells Rodrigo that Desdemona is in fact in love with Cassio. Rodrigo is somewhat shocked by the idea, but Iago tells Rodrigo that Othello is old and black and ugly, and Cassio by comparison is handsome and young, and the kind of guy young women go for. In modern parlance, Cassio is a Chad. Iago continues to be vulgar about Desdemona and her relationship with Othello, both racist and sexist. Rodrigo calls it courtesy, but Iago says it's lechery. Iago is able to convince the gullible Rodrigo easily and manipulate him into doing what he wants. In Iago's speech at the end of Act 2, Scene 1, Iago again asserts that Othello has slept with Emilia, his wife, and that he'll get his revenge, quote, wife for wife. His plan is to discredit Cassio and get Othello to thank him for it. Act 2, Scene 3, and Iago is being coarse again, this time with Cassio, about Othello having sex with his new wife. According to Iago, Desdemona is, quote, sport for Jove and full of game. In modern parlance, what might be termed locker room talk. Men's talk, boys will be boys, etc. Cassio tries to deflect Iago's vulgarity as best he can. And then Iago says, well, let's all have a few drinks and celebrate with the lads. One of the boys, up for a few scoops. Cassio says that he can't because he's got a poorly tummy. But in the end, he caves in to peer pressure and has too much to drink. After Cassio has left the stage drunk, Iago tells Montano, the governor of Cyprus, that it's very sad, Cassio's got a drink problem. Their conversation is interrupted by Cassio, who ends up assaulting Montano. Othello arrives to sort things out, and Iago reluctantly, finally, after much coercion, admits that it's all Cassio's fault, and Othello disowns him and says, quote, never more be officer of mine. Notice that Iago's reluctance to speak is a technique he'll use later in the play when Othello asks him what he's thinking about Cassio and Desdemona. For now, Iago is left with a Cassio at his lowest point, remorseful and sobered up. Cassio worried about his reputation, but Iago pours scorn on Cassio's idea of reputation and says he is too severe a moraler. This mirrors the way Iago pours scorn on Rodrigo's idea of virtue and love. There appears to be a pattern here. It is Iago who reasonably suggests that Cassio asked Desdemona for help, knowing how he will characterise the situation to Othello. And as Cassio leaves, thanking honest Iago for his good advice, Iago has the speech which begins, quote, and what's he then that says I played the villain? This speech is important on a number of levels, not least the idea that Iago is behaving like an actor, i.e. he's pretending to be something he's not, changing to adapt to company and circumstance. More than that, the actor merely reflects us as a mirror, what is around him in real life, what our society is like, both its virtues and its lack of virtue. Iago reminds the audience his advice is free and honest, and people can do what they like with it. Cassio is able to think about his situation for himself. Desdemona and Othello can make their own choices. Of course, in Iago's hands, his pretense is an instrument of deadly corruption, and he freely admits it, quote, so will I turn her virtue into pitch. Act 2 ends with Iago realising how to make Othello jealous, and the way is now open to the play's tragic end. Act 3. Iago and Othello come home from inspecting the island's defences. Cassio leaves before they arrive, which Iago says can't possibly mean anything. After Othello and Desdemona have a spat over talking about Cassio, Iago is back to his old tricks, reluctant to say anything about the situation. Is Cassio honest, quote unquote? What does honest mean? Yes, definitely honest, Michael Cassio. As Iago says, I think that he is honest. But Iago doesn't want to say anything, not his place, doesn't want to defame anyone. You wouldn't want to end up being jealous. Iago piles up the reasons he can't say anything. Iago says that he should have nothing to be jealous about, and Othello enumerates all the reasons why he should not be jealous. Here, of course, Othello might take his own advice. Absolutely you don't, says Iago, but you might just want to watch your wife with Cassio. And then he drops the bombshell on Othello, quote, she did deceive her father marrying you. And also, of course, that she was so good at deceiving that her father thought it was witchcraft. Yeah, Othello can't really argue with either of these points. And Iago says, I do not think, but Desdemona's honest. And it was only a few minutes ago he was asking if it was Cassio who was honest. Now he's asking if Desdemona is honest. Yes, says Iago, you've nothing to worry about, but just in case, don't speak with Cassio and see how your wife responds. Later in the same scene, Iago acquires the handkerchief for Amelia, knowing how he may use it to make Othello even more enraged. And he is thoughtlessly cruel to Amelia in the process. Othello is distraught with suspicion. Iago feigns sympathy, but by now he knows that he has Othello in his grasp, and that he can get Othello to believe anything and to pretty much do anything he wants. Swinburne, the 19th century English poet, called Iago, quote, a contriving artist, and Iago certainly knows how to use opportunities as they arrive. He uses the handkerchief to his best advantage. By the end of Act 3, Scene 3, Iago has got everything he wanted and more. He had planned to disgrace Cassio, which he has done. Now Othello is asking him to kill Cassio. He wanted the job of lieutenant, which he now has. The job he wanted at the opening of the play is his at the end of Act 3. So why does Iago continue? He has everything he wants. But maybe the ease of his success makes him believe that he should keep going. Maybe he's enjoying himself too much. Or maybe he's just in too deep. He's no longer in control of the actions that he has started. In Act 4, he harries a distraught Othello until Othello actually collapses, and then of course tells Othello to, quote, be a man. Would you would bear your fortunes like a man, he tells Othello. Iago confers with Cassio about Bianca, whilst making it seem like Cassio is talking about Desdemona, only for Bianca to turn up and complain that he's given her another woman's handkerchief. Othello is certain of his wife's infidelity and vows to murder her. It is Iago who suggests Othello, quote, strangle her in her bed. And Iago's level of wickedness and perverted vanity goes from bad to worse. As the audience, we wonder just how bad Iago can get. Well, we'll soon find out. His indifference as a desperate and distraught Desdemona begs on her knees for honest Iago to rescue her from the misery into which he has thrown her. The plan to murder Cassio and also Rodrigo, whose death will solve his problems, that no one must be left behind to talk about what Iago has done. It's the opening of Act 5 that Iago gives us another insight into his motivation when he says of Cassio, quote, He hath a daily beauty in his life that makes me ugly. This is spite and envy mixed together. Iago can't stand that Cassio is better than him, so he's going to kill him. And poor pathetic Rodrigo doesn't realise how Iago has deceived him and manipulated him until Iago runs him through with his sword. It's only at the last moment when Rodrigo realises and says, "O damned Iago, O inhuman dog." Now the audience is aware of just how bad Iago has become, and it looks as if his plan is, even now, going to work out. But Iago misjudges Emilia, and he misjudges Desdemona. He knows, or thinks he does, the Emilia that he's married to, the Emilia of his marriage. But he does not see, as we do, what fellowship Emilia and Desdemona have developed. When Emilia turns on him and speaks out and will not be cowed by his threats, Iago has no idea what to do. He is utterly at a loss. In the end, he stupidly, uselessly kills her, thereby proving her right, and for a short time he's a fugitive. Returned to the scene of the crime, Iago refuses to speak. This refusal to speak is in response to Othello's question, quote, "Will you, I pray, demand that demi-devil why he hath thus ensnared my soul and body?" It's a good question, and it's a question the audience is left with long after the play has ended. I hope you've enjoyed this short discussion of Iago's role in Shakespeare's Othello, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Shakespeare Podcast.